next up we have, sorry Matt, Matt Jesson. Matt's an engineer in the HVAC testing field, and he says that that's a lot more fun than it sounds like. He's actually a two-time presenter, and his wife Cassie has also presented. When he gets the chance, he loves to go off into the wilderness, which is what he's going to talk about tonight. He is also in the band Brother Trucker. He'll be playing some gigs this weekend and trying to get in some last-minute training for the High V Triathlon. So he's a busy man. He's going to go give you a great presentation.
Okay if I do that? Okay, this gentleman here is Edward Abbey. He's one of my favorite writers of all time. He wrote a lot about nature and the American Southwest, and he wrote the following: "The idea of wilderness needs no defense, it only needs defenders." As you can probably tell from the photo, he was pretty serious about that notion. But he also went on to say that wilderness is not a luxury, but a necessity for the human spirit. I read that a long time ago, and the words stuck with me because for myself and for a lot of people, those last few areas that we have of pure nature are kind of a sanctuary, kind of a refuge from civilization. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not going to knock civilization, because the truth is I do like civilization. I love being able to sleep in a bed in a house with air conditioning. I like being able to go out to restaurants and bars and art museums. And indoor plumbing is fantastic and something the wilderness lacks. But every once in a while I do feel the need to unplug and kind of escape into nature. And so once a year I get together with some friends and go out to usually Colorado or Wyoming, and that's where all these pictures were taken, and go out into the wilderness, kind of pretend to be mountain men for a few days. It's a lot of fun, and you get to see things out there that you just can't see in civilization. The pristine nature, the stars. Once you get away from the light pollution of cities, the stars that you can see are amazing. The very first time I went on a backpacking trip and I looked up at the night sky, I had trouble finding basic constellations like Orion, stuff that I had known about since I was a kid, because when I looked up I saw all these stars I had never seen before. It looked like there were 100 Orions up there. It's an amazing experience. Now the areas I'm talking about are actually legally protected U.S. wilderness areas. This all came about through the Wilderness Act of 1964. It was signed into law by Lyndon Johnson. It was the result of many years of hard work by wilderness advocates to protect these natural places. The law itself has a lot of legal definitions and a lot of junk about who administers what and boring stuff like that. But more interesting in the law is the language that really defines what wilderness is. It calls it an area that is untrammeled by man, where man himself is a visitor that does not remain. I love that they included that kind of poetic language in an act of Congress, and that it so firmly states what it's about. The national parks at this point have been around for many years, and national parks are really a treasure, like the Ken Burns thing, America's best idea. And I love how accessible they are to the general public. But they're accessible to the general public because they are developed. There's roads going to and through them, often major highways. There's buildings, there's gift shops and restaurants and hotels, there's restrooms. And when you get to a national park, you drive up to a gate, a guard station. Usually you pay an entrance fee and you drive your car in. Very different when you get to the boundary of a wilderness area. At most, there's going to be a simple sign telling you you're entering the such and such wilderness. This one, Flat Tops Wilderness in Colorado. And nobody's there to take your money. If you want to, I suppose you could throw some dollars on the ground or something like that. I suggest you don't. That's littering. That's not very nice. And you're not going to drive in. You're going to walk, or you're going to go on horseback. No vehicles. Those are your only two options. But there are a lot of options for where to go. There are actually 757 of these designated wilderness areas in the United States. 110 million acres of land. Now about half of that is in Alaska, and as I'm sure you can imagine, a lot of it is in the West. But there are U.S. wilderness areas throughout the country. The South, the Midwest, the Rust Belt, and even the East Coast. In fact, the very first wilderness area that was designated under the law is in New Jersey. It's called the Great Swamp of New Jersey. Sounds nice. I've never been. There are 6 states that have no wilderness areas at all. Only 6. And Iowa, alas, is one of those. But all of our surrounding states, all of our neighbor states, do have wilderness areas. So they're not too far away, so there's not much of an excuse. I really suggest that you go out and experience them. Take advantage of this great thing that we have. And as you get out there and you kind of cross that invisible boundary between civilization and wilderness, you see that wooden sign. Think a little bit about the relationship of those two concepts, wilderness and civilization. I used to kind of think of them as opposing forces, total opposites, contrary to one another. But now I realize that civilization is actually what allows us to appreciate and enjoy the wilderness. And more importantly, it's what allows us to protect it. If people hadn't worked hard to push through laws to protect these places, they wouldn't be around. And if the laws ever go away, I can guarantee you they won't be there for long. And I'm very proud of our country and really grateful that at least at one point in our history, it was a priority to do this, to set aside these places, to just be what they are and leave them alone. Not to make money off of them, grow revenue from them, or exploit them for natural resources, but just to let them be. You're not going to go in and build roads. You're not going to build a subdivision. You don't log them. You don't go in and frack for natural gas in there. You leave it alone because this is wilderness, and you're just a visitor who does not remain. Just remember to close the gate when you leave.